Book 17. Book 17. Argument. A dreadful fight about Patroclus' corse. Euphorbus slain by Menelaus' force. Hector in the armor of Aeacides, Antilochus relating the decease. Menelaus' force. Hector in the armor of Aeacides. Hector in the armor of Aeacides, Antilochus relating the decease of slain Patroclus to fair Thetis' son. The body, fair Thetis' son, the body from the striving Trojans won. The body from the striving Trojans won, the Ajaces making good the afterfield, make all the subject that this book doth yield. Antilochus relating the decease of Antilochus relating the decease of slain Patroclus to fair Thetis' son, of slain Patroclus to fair Thetis' son. The body from the striving Trojans won, the Ajaces making good the afterfield. Make the Ajaces making good the afterfield. Make all the subject that this book doth yield. Make all the subject that this book doth yield. Another argument. In Rho, the venturous hosts maintain a slaughterous conflict for the slain. In Rho, the venturous hosts maintain a slaughterous conflict for the slain. Book 17. Nor could his slaughter rest concealed from Menelaus' ear, who flew amongst the foremost fights, and with his targe and spear circled the body, as much grieved, and with as tender heed to keep it theirs, as any dam about her firstborn seed, not proving what the pain of birth would make the love before. Nor to pursue his first attaint, Euphorbus' spirit forbore. But seeing Menelaus, chief in rescue of the dead, essayed him thus. Okay, I don't think we have Euphorbus. Oh, apparently we do? When does Euphorbus speak? Well, if I wrote it down. Not a dart, but in Greek's bosom it shall take, and make him give his ghost. I don't know that Euphorbus has a speaking part in other translations. Besides that, maybe he's using some other character's name as Euphorbus. If that's what it says, I'm going to make it the same Euphorbus. In rescue of the dead, essayed him thus. Atrides, cease! Atrides, cease, and leave the slaughtered with his embrued spoil to the man that first of all our state and famous succors in fair fight made passage to his fate. And therefore suffer me to wear the good name I have won amongst the Trojans. Suffer me to wear the good name I have won amongst the Trojans, lest thy life repay what his hath done. All right, let's pull in Menelaus, and we'll just pull in any other ones that'll probably be needed. So Ajax, probably greater and lesser. Maybe Agamemnon. Probably Aeneas is going to be in there, I'm guessing. Apollo. I don't know if Apollo. Maybe. Let's pull him in for now. And Does Achilles hear about it in this book? I don't think he does. It would be the next book. We would need Nestor's son Antilochus, who we don't have a voice for yet. Interesting. I would have thought he spoke already. We obviously need Menelaus, which I already have. Ulysses, maybe? And let's see. Maybe Paris. And maybe Jupiter. And possibly Glaucus again. All right, well, this is good so far. Oh, also Hector is almost certainly going to show up at some point. All right, Euphorbus. Now we need Menelaus. Now also give me ear, whom grief lest thy life repay what his hath done. O Jupiter, said he, incensed, thou art no honest man to boast so past thy power to do. Not any lion can, nor spotted leopard, nor boar, whose mind is mightiest in pouring fury from his strength, advance so proud a crest. Hold on, there's a illustration here, so I have to scroll past this in the original text. The illustrations are really cool in this edition. It's from I want to say 1890s or something. I might be totally wrong about that, but let's check the front page here. It is from 1887. That was pretty close. That's the reason, by the way, that, I've done plenty of audiobooks that are licensed, and obviously I don't own the rights to that to share. I would have the rights to publish the book, but not to, give away for free essentially my reading of the entire book. But because this is, out of copyright, the source that I'm pulling from is out of copyright, that I'm able to do this. Obviously, somebody else would not be able to then take my thing, legally at least, would not be able to take my thing and publish that, because this is, by having been published by me on YouTube, is, under my rights as the creator of this. But I can share my creation of the project. And I'm excited to do it. I haven't heard of anyone ever having done this before for an audiobook. Audible posts little short videos of people, clips of them making the Harry Potter full cast editions or something. But I've never heard of somebody posting the entire process of making an audiobook before. So I'm excited to be possibly the first person ever to do it. It's not to say these are very entertaining videos to watch, but that doesn't change the fact that it's the first, or could be the first. Okay, let's check this again. In pouring forth fury from his strength, advance so proud a crest as Panthus' fighting progeny, but Hyperenor's pride. Okay. In pouring forth fury from his strength. In pouring forth fury from his strength, advance so proud a crest as Panthus' fighting progeny. So proud a crest as Panthus' fighting progeny. But Hyperenor's pride, that joyed so little time his youth, when he so vilified my force in arms, and called me worst of all our chivalry, and stood my worst, might teach you all to shun this Sursuidry? Have not heard of that word before. Oops. Cirquidry? No way. I gotta look that up in another source. When I search for this word, the first result that comes up is this edition of the Iliad. Wow. Okay, so this is a very rare word. Oh, this is an edition of, because Chapman actually translated not only the Iliad and the Odyssey, but also a bunch of the what is now known to be apocryphal works of Homer, like the Battle of the Frogs and Mice, which I haven't read actually his Odyssey or his other works. I'm pretty sure he did the Homeric whatever they're called, the Homeric those odes to various gods and stuff. Why am I drawing a blank on that? But I'm pretty sure he did those too, so I'd be interested to read all that. The Battle of the Frogs and Mice is a very fascinating story, whoever really wrote it. It's kind of cool to think it was Homer, but I'm sure it probably wasn't. All right, let's see if I can. I found an old edition of this Chapman book, a different Chapman book that has a index at the end that seems to explain this word. So let's see if we can figure out what this means. Okay. So it just defines the word, and it says overweening pride. But it also says to check the note in Iliad book 17, which is what we're currently narrating. So let's check the note. We know that it's going to be close to the front. I'm really wasting a lot of time trying to find the definition or the pronunciation of one stupid little word. The hymns, the Homeric hymns, is what I was trying to think of, which he did apparently do. I would like to read all of those, but I have only read his Iliad, which I absolutely love, and that's why I'm spending so much time and effort to make this edition of it, which again is, in my understanding, a first. I don't think anybody has published a audiobook edition of Chapman's Iliad, which is why I'm doing it. That's the reason I do most audiobooks that I do, is because nobody's done it, and I want to hear it as an audiobook. So there's nothing else for it except for me to do it. Well, what the heck? Where is the Iliad in this? Okay. This is an edition of Chapman's. Okay. Frogs and Mice and the hymns and epigrams, but not of the Iliad. So, all right. Well, let's say it doesn't really matter what their explanation of the definition is. It just matters what the pronunciation is. And we already have the definition anyway, so whatever. I would be interested to see how that explains what it has to say about that. Screw it. I'm going to look it up. Let's keep checking here. Because this is a Project Gutenberg of Chapman's Iliad. And if we searched it on there, it would be searchable. Oh, see, but this only has the text of it, not the notes. Well, whatever. Again, I mean, it's not. Oh, here's a thing called Homer Unfamiliar Words. Okay. Circuitry. Oh, but this just lists the words. That doesn't help me. Okay, we're going down a rabbit hole here. Let's just narrate the book. Well, I hope this goes to show that I really do put in a lot of effort on these narrations, if it's not clear already. Okay. Circuitry. 1, 2, 3. When he so vilified my force in arms, and called me worst of all our chivalry, and stood my worst, might teach you all to shun this circuitry. I think he came not... might teach you all to shun this circuitry. I think he came not safely home to tell his wife his acts, nor less right to tell his wife his acts, nor less right of thy insolence my equal fate exacts, and will obtain, if thou sayest. Retire then, take advice. A fool sees naught before it is done. Take advice. A fool sees not before it is done, and still too late is wise. This moved not him, but to the worse. This moved not him, but to the worse, since it renewed the sting that his slain brother shot in him, remembered by the king, to whom he answered. So now we're back to Euphorbus here. Wait a second. No. Okay, it is Euphorbus I'm thinking of, yeah. Not a dart, Panthus' son. By the king, to whom he answered, Thou shalt pay for all the pains endured. Thou shalt pay for all the pains endured by that slain brother, all the wounds sustained for him, recured with one made in thy heart by me. 'Tis true, thou madest his wife a heavy widow, when her joys of wedlock scarce had life, and hurtst our parents with his grief. All which thou gloriest in, for speaking so thy death, and now their grief's end. Thy death, for speaking so thy death, that now their grief's end shall begin. To Panthus and the snowy hand of Phrontes I will bring those arms, that proud head of thine, and that proud head of thine, and this laborious thing shall ask no long time to perform, nor be my words alone, no long time to perform, nor be my words alone, but their performance, strength, and fight, and terror thus sets on. This said, he struck his all-round shield, nor shrunk that, but his lance that turned head in it. Nor shrunk that, but his lance that turned head in it. Then the king essayed the second chance, first praying to the king of gods, and his dart entry got, the force much driving back his foe in low part of his throat. And ran his neck through. Then fell pride, and he, and all with gore his locks, that like the graces were, and which he ever wore in gold and silver ribands ripped. Ribbons wrapped, were piteously wet. Ever wore in gold and silver ribbons wrapped, were piteously wet. And when alone in some choice place, a husbandman hath set the young plant of an olive tree, whose root being ever fed with plenty of delicious springs, his branches bravely spread, and all his fresh and lovely head grown curled with snowy flowers, that dance and flourish, flowers that dance and flourish with the winds that are of gentlest powers. But when a whirlwind, got aloft, stoops with a sudden gale, tears from his head his tender curls, and tosseth wherewithal his fixed root from his hollow minds, it well presents the force of Sparta's king, and so the plant Euphorbus, and his course. He slain, the king stripped off his arms, and with their worthy prize, all fearing him, had clearly passed, if heaven's fair eye of eyes had not, in envy of his acts, to his encounter stirred the Mars-like Hector. Whose powers the rescue he preferred of those fair arms, and took the shape of Mentas, colonel of all the Cicones that near the Thracian Hebrus dwell. Like him he puts forth his voice. Okay, so Eye of Eyes in this case is not far-seeing Jupiter who watches the wide world, but rather is Apollo, I assume because of the metaphor of the sun being a giant eye. And I only know that because it sounds obviously like it would be Jupiter based on the epithet, but I only know that because of how many other translations of the Iliad I've read, and I know that it's Apollo. Betwixt death, turn head, ye well-rowed peers of Troy. Let's also just check the pronunciations of these. Cicones, Thracian, Hebrus. Hebrus? Okay. Oh, and Mentas. Good. The shape of Mentas, colonel of all the Cicones that near the Thracian Hebrus dwell. Like him he puts forth this voice. Hector, thou scourest the field in headstrong pursuit of the horse that hardly are compelled to take headstrong pursuit of the horse that hardly are compelled to take the draught of chariots by any mortal's hand. The great grandchild of Aeacus hath only their command, whom an immortal mother bore. While thou attend'st on these, the young Atrides in defense of Menicides hath slain Euphorbus. Thus the god took troop with men again, and Hector, heartily perplexed, looked round and saw the slain, still shedding rivers from his wound, and then took envious view of brave Atrides with his spoil, in way to whom he flew like one of Vulcan's quenchless flames. Atrides heard the cry that ever ushered him, and sighed, and said, Now also give me ear, whom grief gives, that ever rushed him, and sighed, and said, Atrides heard the cry that ever ushered him, and sighed, and said, O me, if I should leave these goodly arms, and him that here lies dead for me, I fear I should offend the Greeks. If I should stay and be alone with Hector and his men, I may be compassed in, Some sleight or other they may use, many may quickly win their wills of one, and all Troy comes ever where Hector leads. But why, and all Troy comes ever where Hector leads. But why, dear mind, dost thou thus talk, when men dare set their heads against the gods, as sure they do that fight? The gods, as sure they do that fight with men they love, straight one or other plague ensues. It cannot therefore move the grudge of any Greek that sees I yield to Hector, he still fighting with a spirit from heaven. And yet, if I could see brave Ajax, he and I would stand, though 'gainst a god, and sure 'tis best I seek him. And then, if we two can see if we two can procure this course's freedom through all these. A little then let rest the body and mind. Through all these. A little then let rest the body and my mind be still. Of two bads choose the best. In this discourse the troops of Troy were in with him. And he made such a lion-like retreat, as when the herdsmen see the royal savage, and come on, with men, dogs, cries, and spears, to clear their horned stall. And then the kingly heart he bears, with all his high disdain, falls off. So from this odds of aid, the golden-haired Atrides fled, and in his strength displayed upon his left hand him he wished, extremely busied about encouraging his men, to whom... Okay, he wants this to be busied. To whom him he wished, extremely busied about the... Upon his left hand him he wished, extremely busied upon his left hand him he... Atrides fled, and in his strength displayed upon his left hand him he wished, extremely busied about encouraging his men, to whom an extreme dread Apollo had infused. The king reached Ajax instantly, and said, "Come, friend, let us two haste, and from the tyranny of Hector free Patroclus' course. Of Hector, free Patroclus' course." He straight and gladly went. And then was Hector hailing off the body with intent to spoil the shoulders of the dead and give the dogs the rest. His arms he having prized before, when Ajax brought his breast to bar all further spoil. With that he had sure Hector thought 'twas best to satisfy his spleen. Which temper Ajax wrought with his mere sight, and Hector fled. The arms he sent to Troy, to make his citizens admire, and pray Jove send him joy. Then Ajax gathered to the course, and hit it with his targe, there setting down as sure a foot as in the tender charge of his loved whelps a lion doth, 200 hunters near to give him onset. Their more force makes him the more austere. Their more force makes him the more austere, drowns all their clamors in his roars, darts, dogs, doth all despise, and lets his rough brows down so low they cover all his eyes. Drowns all their clamors in his roars, darts, dogs doth all despise, and lets his rough brows down so low they cover all his eyes. So Ajax looked, and stood, and stayed for great Priamides, and stayed, looked, and stood, and stayed for great Priamides. When Glaucus Hippolochides? How did I do that one? Hippolochides. I'm changing that. Some of these Chapman words, like, he just made that up, Hippolochides. I've never heard of that as an official way to... I guess you could do it, but it's not a commonly used, patronymic way to say Glaucus's lineage. So we're going to do it based on what fits the rhyme and meter. But for now, let's pull in Glaucus's voice. Why dost thou so explore? Said Glaucus. Of what race I am. Let's pull out this part here. Explore of what race I am, when like the race of leaves. And stayed for great Priamides. When Glaucus Hippolochides saw Ajax thus depressed. When Glaucus Hippolochides, no, that doesn't sound right. Great Priamides. When Glaucus Hippolochides saw Ajax thus depress the spirit of Hector, thus he chid. O goodly man-at-arms! O goodly man-at-arms! O goodly man-at-arms! In fight a Paris! Why should fame make thee fort against... In fight a Paris! Why should fame make thee fort against our harms, being such a fugitive? Now mark how well thy boasts defend. Now mark how well thy boasts defend the city only with her own. Boasts defend thy city only with her own. Be sure it shall descend to that. Sure it shall descend to that proof wholly. Not a man of any Lycian rank shall strike one stroke more for the town. Shall strike one stroke more for thy town. More for thy town. For no man gets a thank should he eternally fight here, nor any guard of thee. How wilt thou, worthless that thou art, keep off an enemy from our poor soldiers, when their prince, from our poor soldiers, when their prince Sarpedon, guest and friend to thee, and most deservedly and most deservedly thou flewst from in his aid. Thou flewst from in his aid, and left to all the lust of Greece, and leftest to all the lust of Greece. From his end, in his end, thou flewst from in his end, and leftest to all the lust of Greece. O gods, a man that was in life so huge a good to Troy, and to thee such a grace in death not kept by thee from dogs. If my friends will do well, we'll take our shoulders from your walls, and let all sink to hell. Your walls, and let all sink to hell, and let all sink to hell, as all will, were our faces turned. Did such a spirit breathe in all you Trojans, as becomes all men that fight beneath their country standard, you would see. Their country standard, you would see that such as prop your cause with like exposure of their lives have all the honored laws of such a dear confederacy kept to them to a thread, as now ye might reprise the arms from Sarpedon, forfeited by forfeit of your rights to him. But you would lend your hands and force Patroclus to your Troy. Ye know how dear he stands in his love. That of all the Greeks is. In his love that of all the Greeks is for him, of all the Greeks is for himself far best, and leads the best near fighting men, and therefore would at least redeem Sarpedon's arms, nay him when whom you like, nay him whom you have likewise lost. This body drawn to Ilion would redeem Sarpedon's arms, nay him whom you have likewise lost. This body drawn to Ilion would after draw and cost a greater ransom if you pleased. But Ajax startles you. 'Tis his breast bars this right to us. His looks are darts enow to mix great Hector with his men, and not to blame ye are, you chose. To blame ye are, you chose foes. And not to blame ye are, you choose foes underneath. You choose foes underneath your strengths. Choose foes underneath your strengths. Underneath your strength. Ajax exceeds ye far. Your strengths, Ajax exceeds ye far. Hector looked passing sour at this, and answered. Okay, it's a bit tough to do the Glaucus and Sarpedon voices I came up with, But I do like the idea of doing them to emphasize the difference in cultural. Again, Lycian contingent is the biggest speaking part of all the, battle helpers to Troy, which is why, at least for them, I want to give them a different accent to represent the fact that actually all contingents allied with Troy have different accents. Trojans and hardy Greeks, passing sour at this, and answered, "Why darest thou so under to talk above me so? O friend, I thought till now thy wisdom was superior to all the inhabitants of glebe Lycia. But now impute apparent once to that discretion thy words show, to say I lost my ground for Ajax' greatness. Nor fear I the field in combats drowned, nor force of chariots, but I fear a power much better seen in right of all war than all we. Much better seen in right of all war than all we. That God that holds between our victory and us his shield, Let's conquest come and go at his free pleasure, and with fear converts her changes so upon the strongest. Men must fight when his just spirit impels, not their vain glories. But come on, make thy steps parallels to these of mine, and then be the judge how deep the work will draw. If then I spend the day in shifts, or thou canst give such law to thy detractive spirits then, to thy detractive speeches then, or if the Grecian host holds any in that pride of strength, holds up his spirit most, for whom the carriage of this prince that thou enforcest so, I make not stoop in his defense. You, friends, ye hear and know how much it fits ye to make good this Grecian I have slain, for ransom of Jove's son, our friend. His defense. You, friends, hear and know how much it fits ye to make good this Grecian I have slain, for ransom of Jove's son, our friend. Play then the worthy men, till I endure Achilles' arms. This said, he left the fight, and called back those that bore the arms, not yet without his sight, in convoy of them towards Troy. For them he changed his own, removed from where it rained tears, and sent them back to town. Then put he on the eternal arms that the celestial states gave Peleus. Peleus being old, their use appropriates to his Achilles, that, like him, forsook them not for age. When he, whose empire is in clouds, saw Hector bent to wage war in divine Achilles' arms, he shook his head and said, okay, let's pull in Jove here, or Jupiter. And by power to give it act, approve how vain her strife is. 1, 2. Shook his head and said, Poor wretch, thy thoughts, poor wretch, poor wretch, thy thoughts are far from death, though he so near hath laid his ambush for thee. Though he so near hath laid his ambush for thee. Thou put'st on those arms as braving him whom others fear, as braving him whom thou put'st on those arms as braving him whom others fear, whom others fear, has slain his friend, and from his youthful limb torn rudely off his heavenly arms, himself being gentle, kind, and valiant. Equal measure then thy life in youth. Equal measure then thy life in youth must find. Yet, since the justice is so strict that not Andromache in thy denied return from flight must ever take of thee those arms in glory of thy acts. In glory of thy acts, thou shalt have that frail blaze of excellence. Thou shalt have that frail blaze of excellence, that neighbor's death. Of excellence, that neighbor's death, a strength even to amaze. That neighbor's death, a strength even to amaze. To this his sable brows did bow, and he made fit his limbs. Did bow, and he made fit his. Did bow, and he made fit his limb to those great. Okay, it's still Jupiter who is making the arms fit Hector. Okay. To this his sable brows did bow, and he made fit his limb to those great arms, to fill which up the war god entered him. To fill which up the war god entered him, austere and terrible, his joints and every part extends with strength and fortitude, and thus to his admiring friends, high clamor brought him. He so shined that all could think no less, but he resembled every way great-souled Iacides. Then every way he scoured the field, his captains calling on, Asteropaeus, Eunomus. Let's pull in the names here. Eunomus, Glaucus, Medon, Decenor, Thersilochus, Phorcys, Mesthles, Chromius, Hippothous. All right, if that's what I wrote down. He scoured the field, his captains calling on. Asteropaeus, Eunomus, his captains calling on. Asteropaeus, Eunomus, that foresaw all things done. Glaucus and Medon, Decenor, and Strong's Is it Decenor? Yes. Glaucus and Medon, Decenor, and strong Thersilochus. Decenor, and strong Thersilochus. And strong Thersilochus. Phorcys and Mesthles, Chromius, and great Hippothous. And strong Thersilochus. Phorcys and Mesthles, and Mesthles, Chromius, and great Hippothous. To all these and their populous troops, these his excitements were. Hear us, innumerable friends, near bordering nations, hear. Near bordering nations, hear. We have not called you from your towns to fill our idle eye with to fill our idle eye with number of so many men. No such vain empery did ever joy us. No such vain empery did ever joy us. But to fight, and of our Trojan wives, with all their children, manfully to save the innocent lives, in whose cares we draw all our towns of aiding soldiers. The innocent lives, in whose cares we draw all our towns of aiding soldiers dry, with gifts, guards, victual, all things fit, and hearten their supply with all like rights. And therefore now let all sides set down this, or live, or perish. This of war the special secret is, in which most resolute design whoever bears to town Patroclus laid dead to his hand by winning the renown of Ajax' slaughter. The half spoil we wholly will impart to his free use. And to ourself the other half convert. And so the glory shall be shared. Ourself will have no more than he shall shine in. This drew all to bring abroad their store before the body. Every man had hope it would be his, and forced from Ajax. Silly fools, Ajax prevented this by raising rampires to his friend with half their carcasses. And yet his humor was to roar and fear, and now no less to startle Sparta's king, to whom he cried out, "Oh, my..." Actually, let's pull Ajax's voice here, which I already did. "Oh, friends, the lot is mine." Sparta's king, to whom he cried out, "Oh, my friend, oh, Menelaus, never more hope to get off. Here's the end of all our labors. Not so much I fear to lose the course, for that's sure gone. The fowls of Troy and dogs will quickly force that piecemeal, as I fear my head, and thine, O Atreus, son. Hector a cloud brings will hide all. Instant destruction, grievous and heavy comes. Oh, call our peers to aid us, fly. He hasted and used all his voice, sent far and near his cry. Now also give me ear. Far and near his cry. O princes, chief lights of the Greeks, and you that publicly eat with our general and me, and you that publicly eat with our general and me, all men of charge. Oh no, Jove gives both grace and dignity to any that will show good minds for only good itself, though presently the eye of him that rules discern him not. 'Tis hard for me to espy through all this smoke of burning fight, each captain in his place, and call assistance to our need. Be then each other's grace, and freely follow each his next. Disdain to let the joy of great Iacides be forced to feed the beasts of Troy. Of great Iacides be forced to feed the beasts of Troy. His voice was heard and obeyed by His voice was first heard and obeyed by swift Oeliades, Idomeneus and his mate, Idomeneus and his mate renowned Meriones were seconds to Oelia's son. But of the rest, whose mind can lay upon his voice the names that after these combined in setting up this fight on end? The Trojans first gave on, and as into the sea's vast mouth, when mighty rivers run, their billows and the seas resound, and all the utter shore re-bellows in her angry shocks, the sea's repulsive roar. With such sounds gave the Trojans charge, so was their charge repressed. One mind filled all the Greeks, good brass shields close couched to every breast, and on their bright helms Jove poured down a mighty deal of night to hide Patroclus, whom alive, and when he was the knight of that grandchild of Aeacus, Saturnius did not hate, nor dead would see him dealt to dogs, and so did instigate his fellows to his worthy guard. At first the Trojans drave the black-eyed Grecians from the course, but not a blow they gave that came at death. A while they hung about the body's heels, the Greeks quite gone. But all that while did Ajax whet the steels of all his forces, that cut back way to the course again. Brave Ajax, that for form and fact passed all that did maintain the Grecian fame, next Thetis' son, now flew before the first, and as a sort of dogs and youths are by a boar dispersed about a mountain, so and as a sort of dogs and youths are by a boar dispersed about a mountain, so fled these from mighty Ajax, all that stood in conflict for the course, who thought no chance could fall betwixt them and the prize at Troy, for bold Hippothous, Lithus, Pelasgus' famous son. It's saying Hippothous is the one who in a very roundabout way, it's saying Hippothous was the one who killed Lethus, Pelasgus. Or is it saying that Hippothous is the one who is killed by Lethus? They all fled from mighty Ajax, all that stood in conflict for the course, who thought no chance could fall betwixt them and the prize at Troy. Lethus, Pelasgus' famous son, was so adventurous that he would stand to bore the course about the ankle bone, where all the nervy fibers meet, ligaments one, then make the motion of those parts, through which he did convey the thong bodric of his shield, and so was drawing away all thanks from Hector and his friends. But in their steel... Oh, hold on. Lethus... Or wait. Okay. Hippothous is... Right. He is a ally of Hector. The thing that's screwing me up is that it gives 3 names for Hippothous. One is Hippothous, one is Lethus, and one is the patronymic that he is Pelasgus' famous son. But what is Lethus then? This calls him Lethiades. So it sounds like he is the son of Lethus. Lethiades. Well, I guess we will do it under the assumption that maybe Hold on. Like Pelasgi and Argos or Pelasgus, it's saying he's a son of the land where he comes from. And Lethus is the father of him. Let's assume that's what it is. We only need to have it well enough that when I speak the words, it has to be informed by knowing what is happening, or else it's not going to, for anybody who does know what's happening, it's not going to sound like I'm describing the scene correctly. That stood in conflict for the course, who thought no chance could fall. Of dogs and youths are by a boar dispersed about a mountain. So fled these from mighty Ajax, all that stood in conflict for the course, who thought that no chance could fall, who thought no chance could fall betwixt them and the prize at Troy. For bold Hippothous, Lethus, Pelasgus' famous son, was so adventurous that he would stand to bore the course about the ankle bone. Was so adventurous that he would stand to bore the course about the ankle bone, where all the nervy fibers meet and ligaments in one. That make the motion of those parts, through which he did convey the thong or baldric of his shield, and so was drawing away all thanks from Hector and his friends. But in their stead he drew an ill that no man could avert, for Telamonius threw a lance that struck quite through his helm. His brain came leaping out. Down fell Lethiades, and with him the body's hoisted foot. If I'm saying his name is Lethus, then it should be Lethiades. Lethiades, maybe. Down fell Lethiades, and with him leaping out. Down fell Lethiades, and with him the body's hoisted foot. Down fell Lethiades. Down fell Lethiades. I think it's Lethiades. Again, this is like there's not really an official way to say this. There's not an official way to say any Greek name, except for like Achilles, which is pretty well attested. It's, names of that caliber. But even those, the question still stands of if you want to say it in the Latin inspired way, which is Achilles, or if you want to do it something that's closer to Achilleus, which is the ancient Greek version, or somewhere between the two of them. And you have to basically make a decision per name of where you're going to fall on that spectrum. Okay. A lance that struck quite through his helm. His brain came leaping out. His brain came leaping out. Down fell Lethiades, and with him the body's hoisted foot. Far from Larissa's soil he fell. Far from Larissa's soil he fell, a little time allowed to his industrious spirits to quit the benefits bestowed by his kind parents. But his reek Priamides essayed. And threw at Ajax. But his dart discovered, passed, and stayed at Schedius, son of Iphitus, a man of ablest hand of all the strong Phocensians, and lived with great command in Panopeus. See that? Okay. Let's see if I have this in the master guide, Panopeus. Because there was an umlaut over it in my notes, which I must have, sometimes when you copy the text to copy paste it into the spreadsheet, it doesn't understand what the text is, so it adds an umlaut. So if it had an umlaut, it would be what I had written, which was Panopeus. But it doesn't have an umlaut in the text, so it would be Panopeus. I think, at least. Okay, other ones, Phocensians. Yep, Phocensians. Of all the strong Phocensians, and lived with great command. All right, we could do that. Priamides, Ajax, Schedius. All right. Iphitus. All right. But his reek Priamides essayed, and threw at Ajax. But his dart discovered, passed, and stayed at Schedius. Schedius, I said, right? Schedius. Discovered, passed, and stayed at Schedius, son of Iphitus, a man of ablest hand of all the strong Phocensians, and lived with great command in Panopeus. The fell dart fell through his channel bone. Pierced through his shoulder's upper part, and set his spirit gone. When after his another flew, the same hand giving wing to martial forces startled stole. The same hand giving wing to martial forces startled soul, that was the afterspring of... Let's check some names here. Okay, Phenops. Phorcys. Hippothous. Phorcys. Ilion, Troy, Greek, Phoebus. Periphas. Okay, stand by here for 1 second. All right. We're back here. What page are we on? 273. I just want to check. I have a time limit, so I don't want to. Okay, we could probably do this. Well, we'll get a couple pages in, I think. I don't think I'll be able to do it in one session. Okay. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Okay. The fell dart fell through his channel bone, pierced through his shoulder's upper part, and set his spirit gone. When after his another flew, the same hand giving wing to martial forces' startled soul. Okay, so it's saying that after his soul flew, another flew, not that after his dart flew, another flew. Well, actually, it could be either. Okay. Set his spirit gone. When after his another flew, the same hand giving wing to martial forces' startled soul, that was the afterspring of Phoenop's seed. That was the afterspring of Phoenop's seed. The javelin struck his curates through, and tore the bowels from the bellies, and tore the bowels from the belly's midst. His fall made those before give back a little. Hector's self enforced to turn his face, and then the Greeks bestowed their shouts, took vantage of the chase, drew off, and spoiled Hippothous and forces of their arms, and then ascended Ilion had, shaken with alarms, discovering the impotence of Troy, even past the will of Jove, and by the proper force of Greece, had Phoebus failed to move Aeneas in Yeah, it's tough to understand in modern English the way that these sentence structures work. But it's saying, and now Ilion had been destroyed, had not Phoebus done this. So it's saying Ilion was not destroyed, but it sounds, in the way that we speak in modern English, it would sound like it's saying Ilion was destroyed, the way that that's phrased. So I try to always really emphasize like the part where it's like, had Phoebus, like give it like a really, like the tides are turning in that sentence, which I think makes it easier to understand listening to it than actually reading it. That's the point of everything I'm doing in the audiobook, is to make it easier to listen to than to be read. I think this, in particular, this translation works best being heard. Although all translations, I think, should be heard rather than read. But this one in particular, because of the musicality of the verse, this and Pope's Iliad, and those ones in particular. Forces of their arms. And then ascended Ilian had shaken with alarms, discovering the importance. And then ascended Ilian had shaken with alarms, discovering the impotence of Troy, even past the will of Jove, and by the proper force of Greece. Had Phoebus failed to move Aeneas in similitude of Periphas, the son of great Epites, king at arms, and had Epites. Of Periphas, the son of great Epites, king at arms, and had good service done to old Anchises, being wise, and even with him in years. Old Anchises, being wise, and even with him in years. But, like this man, the far-seen god, to Venus' son appears, and asked him how he would maintain steep Ilion in her height, in spite of gods, as he presumed, when men approved so slight of all his presumptions, and all theirs that puffed him with that pride, believing in their proper strengths, and generally supplied with such unfrighted multitudes. Being in their proper strengths, and generally supplied with such unfrighted multitudes. But he knew well that Jove, besides their self-conceits, sustained their forces with more love than theirs. But he knew well that Jove, besides their self-conceits, sustained their forces with more love than their sustained their forces with more love than theirs of Greece, and yet all that lacked power to hearten them. And yet all that lacked power to hearten them.